Here's your new quilted book sleeve. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mia and I am so excited to be filming this video. I have wanted to film videos like this for so long, but I've just always been so busy with my own business. And if you're new, I recently put my business on pause to work on a rebrand. And during that time, I figured what better use of my time than showing you guys all of my favorite sewing projects. And we are kicking off the tutorial style videos with a few of my favorite giftable items. And I'm going to show you step by step how to make all of these. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make Kindle and book sleeves. I'm going to be giving you guys these measurements and exactly how I make these, along with some zipper tips, because I spent so long learning how to sew zippers and I want to share with you guys what I've learned and some of my favorite tips and tricks to make them look the best and the cleanest that they can. I'm so excited to share with you guys how to make these, and it's been so nice getting to sew again because it has been over 2 months since I've touched my sewing machine, and it just feels good to be back in my element and test new patterns and product ideas with you guys in real time. So stick around if you want to learn how to make all these things, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I am going to be making more videos on sewing and all the different types of products that I learned how to sew, and we're going to be trying some new sewing stuff like sewing clothes and decorations for the holiday season. I'm just so excited. So if you're excited, then definitely subscribe, and without further ado, let's just get right into sewing these holiday gifts. The quilted book sleeve. The process is the same to sew both the Kindle sleeve and the book sleeve, so I'm just going to be showing you in full instructions how to sew the book sleeve, and then you should know how to do the Kindle sleeve. It's just a different size. They are the same exact steps, it's just that the Kindle is a smaller version. So you're going to be sewing this. I'm going to be adding my logo label on this just because I think it's cute. You can find labels off Amazon. You can hand make your own. I will link a very good tutorial on how to hand make your own labels at home. There are so many videos on how to do it, and all of the materials and supplies that I'm using, I will try to link if I got them from Amazon. So I will try to link as many of the products as I'm using down below, and if I can't find the exact product, I will link an alternative or something similar. So let's just get started. So here are the supplies you're going to need for this project. I'm going to first start by showing you how to put a zipper pull if you're using zipper tape, if you've never done it before. I get my zippers from Wawak. So you want to pull these zipper teeth apart and create a little bit of an opening here, not too big. You want it just to be pretty small. You're going to feed the zipper with the wide open end downwards. So this is the direction that you want to feed it down into the teeth. I start by putting one side in first, making sure that it's good, and then I start putting the other one in slowly. And then once it is in like this, I will hold the zipper on the open end, and then I will press firmly with my left hand and pull the zipper through. Now the zipper is in, and I just pull it all the way just about to the end, and then I will open up this end and there. I'm going to be showing you how to make a quilted zipper pouch. So as you can see, this has quilting lines, so I'm using a high loft batting, and I like to pre-score my markings so that I can make sure that I have a good starting point. So you want to take your outer fabric. You're going to need some sort of ruler. This little rolling wheel tool I got from Fabricland, and what I do is I go from corner to corner, and I use this little tool and I roll it across the fabric. And what it does is it makes a little line, if you can kind of see there, it makes a line of where I'm going to sew my quilting lines over. Now you can quilt your fabric any which way you want. I'm gonna do the waffle quilt just because I like the way that it looks, but you can do straight lines, you can do squares, you can do anything that your heart desires. And the reason why this fabric is going to be bigger than our liner is because when you do quilt, it does shrink a little bit. So I like to cut the panel like about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, depending on how much I'm quilting. We're going to bring this over to our sewing machine. So to help me with quilting, I use a quilt guide bar. The one on my juki looks a little bit different than the one on my Singer. So this is the one for my juki, and I have a pre-taped line here of where all of my quilting lines are. So typically for smaller things, I will just line this bar up with the 1-inch line on here, and that's what I will do for anything that's smaller. But for my laptop sleeves, my book sleeves, tote bags, etc., I use this pre-built line that I made, and this is going to help so that our lines for quilting are straight and not wiggly. So I would say this is about 2 inches, I would say. So if you want to make your quilting line similar to mine, I would say about 2 inches to set your quilting guide bar. The next thing is going to be your stitch length. When I am quilting, I turn my stitch length to about 4 or so. You kind of have to play around with this based on your machine and what your preferences are, but I typically like to keep it anywhere from like 4 to 5 depending on how big of a item that I am quilting. And that's pretty much it for prep. I just like to make sure that I load in a good color thread. So I am quilting on this pink Christmas gingerbread house fabric, so I'm going to be using a cream thread. That's what I use for everything, and it seems to work just fine. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and quilt our first panel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my panel so that it's in the middle of the batting. That's why we cut the batting a little bit larger than the biggest panel so that we have some room to keep it on. Now, if you're a beginner, you probably want to clip your batting to your fabric. That way it doesn't move around. You can also use pins as well. If you fear that your fabric is going to move around, then I would definitely suggest pinning it down. We're going to start with this corner here, and we're going to feed it into the machine, and you're basically just going to follow the line to start. You don't have to backstitch or anything, because when you sew everything together, it's going to lock all the stitches in place, so you can just sew straight down following the line. And when you get to the end, I definitely suggest going past the fabric just a little bit so that your stitch doesn't get lost when you cut it. Now you can see that we have our first stitch here, and we're going to go ahead and do the other diagonal line. To make sure that your fabric doesn't bunch up near where you're crossing your stitches, I would suggest holding your fabric down and really guiding it and just kind of pulling it a little bit taut so nothing bunches up. So now your panel should look a little something like this. Both lines are quilted in an X shape, and now we're gonna go in and quilt all of the lines. I'm gonna show you how to measure the first line, and then I'm gonna go ahead and quilt both the panels, and then we'll see each other again when I'm going to basically sew it up. Okay, so this is where our quilt guide bar is gonna come in handy. So you're gonna wanna line up your guide bar with the line that you pre-made, and this is why that line is really useful. And then you're just basically going to sew and keep the guide bar on the line that you've already sewn, and just do that for all of the lines. Now that both of the panels are quilted, this is the time where you would go ahead and add a label if you're going to add your label. I will show you how I do mine, but if you're not going to add a label, then just skip to this timestamp. This is what my label looks like. It is folded on both of the sides, and I'm going to just sew it. I'm going to pick any panel, and this panel is going to be the front panel, and I'm going to place my label, just eyeballing it honestly. I'm going to place it right about here. I don't want to place it too close to the top because this is where the zipper is going to go, and I also don't want to place it too close to the middle. It just looks funky. So try to place it closer to the top, and I just eyeball this. You will backstitch when you start and when you finish to make sure that the label does not come off. Now that the label is on, as you can see, she is so cute. I'm just gonna trim the top thread that is out here, and I'm gonna use these cute scissors that were gifted to me by my small business friend Sarah. She owns Colorfully Sarah Shop. She does cross stitching and cross stitching kits, so if you want to check her out, I'll leave a link to her shop down below. But these were kindly gifted to me, but they are literally the best scissors ever. Now that the quilting is done, we're going to trim the excess batting around our panel, and I just use scissors to do this. You can also use a rotary blade, but I find that sometimes the rotary blade gets the fibers stuck into my cutting mat and it starts to look a little bit crazy. So I'm just using scissors, but we just want to trim around the actual outer fabric. If you sewed a label on, we're gonna take the panel with the label and you're gonna want to take one of your liner fabrics and grab your zipper. Now I like to use clips to do this, but you can also use pins. It's just up to your preference. We are going to take the zipper, and I have a specific way that I like my zippers to open. I like my zippers to open from left to right. So I make sure that the end that has that little opening part is going to be facing the left or pointing towards the left. That way I know when I close my pouch, it is going to sit at the left and I'm going to open it towards the right. If you don't care, it doesn't really matter, but I just like to do it that way. You are going to line up the top edge of your zipper with your top edge of your fabric, and you're going to start clipping it. The more clips, the better, honestly. You don't want your zipper to move around. And I'm going to open my zipper a little bit so that I have a flat edge here to start sewing. And I'm just going to clip, and I'm going to try to match it up so that it doesn't overlap. It's just perfectly in line. And this is where that extra part of the zipper comes in handy so that you can account for any movement. Now you're going to take your inner liner piece and you are going to lay it on top of the zipper, and you are going to do the same thing. You are going to clip them together. Make sure that it is fully flush on this side and on the top, and you're just going to clip it together. Try to make sure that the fabric isn't bunched up at the top, that it's laid nice and flat, and that will help you sew the zipper. Now we can take this over to our sewing machine and sew a straight stitch all the way across. Okay, we are at my sewing machine. Now the juki does have a zipper foot. However, I find that this 1/4 inch foot works perfectly to sew the zipper at the length that I like it. If you're using a domestic sewing machine, I would definitely suggest getting a zipper foot, or if your machine came with it, definitely switch into a zipper foot. There are tons and tons of videos on TikTok and YouTube on how to switch your zipper foot, so definitely recommend watching one of those. But what you're gonna wanna do, line your zipper up with the very most edge of your foot. You don't want to put your sewing foot over the zipper teeth. You want to just line it right up beside it so that you can get as close to the zipper as possible without actually sewing over. When you start sewing your zipper, you're going to want to back stitch right where the fabric meets the zipper. I'm going to take one of the clips off so you can see better. I'm going to start by going forward and then back stitching a little bit. Now I'm just gonna straight sew all the way. The zipper pull is gonna be in the way. When you get close to it, stop sewing. You're gonna sew up until you get to the zipper pull, just right before. Don't sew over it. So now I'm reaching that zipper pull. You're going to lift up this, get to your zipper pull. You're gonna lift up your presser foot. You're gonna zip it closed so that it passes your foot. That way you now have a flat surface to sew, and you're just gonna continue to sew along this whole line until you get to the end. And don't forget to back stitch at the end so you'll lock that stitch in place. So now your zipper stitch should look something like this, and now we're going to do that same thing on the other side. So we're going to open up the liner panel, we are going to fold it back and lay everything as flat as you can. Next, outer panel. Outer panels are always going to be facing each other, and you want the batting side facing up. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to line it up with that outer panel and the top of that zipper, and we are going to clip. I'm clipping the opposite way so that when I sew, I'm not sewing over the batting, I'm actually just sewing over the liner. It just helps not get the batting stuck in my machine. You want to make sure that you're being really precise, don't rush through it, just so that you don't have any holes on your zipper, because it is a little bit of a pain to fix that. Once you have it clipped, you can flip it over. Now we're going to attach the liner. You're gonna grab your other liner piece. You want the right sides facing each other. If your fabric has a right and a wrong side, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna line up those liner pieces and clip it all on, making sure that they are all even at the top. Now we're going to take this over to our sewing machine and we're going to sew the same thing right across, back stitching at the front and the end. Don't forget, when you get to the zipper pull, to make sure you pull it back by lifting up your foot and just opening that zipper up, and then you can finish sewing. When you get to the end, it does help to sometimes use something to hold it through, because sometimes my finger is a bit too large. We're almost finished with the new book sleeve. We're gonna do the top stitch on the zipper. So we're gonna open it up like this, and then we're gonna close the zipper. I like to close it like this so that I can pull this really taut. Now you can press it down, but like I said, the batting that I'm using is polyester, and when I use heat on it, it depuffs it. I'm not gonna press it down, but if you're using a different type of batting, then you can definitely press it down to get the seams flat. But I'm gonna take you to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna show you how I can get those really clean top stitches on this zipper. You wanna open up your book sleeve or zipper pouch so that the two liner pieces on the back are open like this, and the two panel pieces on the top are open like this. So you have a liner and an outer on one side and the same on the other. And as you're sewing, you want to pull the liner underneath taut, and you also want to pull the top panel pretty taut as well. Once you pull them, you can use your hand to kind of hold it, and that's how you're going to sew. You're going to make sure that it's pretty taut. You could clip it if you want, if you need more support. And basically you're just going to sew it through the machine as close as you can to the top of the zipper, and this is going to hold it in place so that the liner doesn't bunch up on the back. And I will show you exactly what I mean. My one tip for you to sew the zipper so that they're not bulky on the edges and you can turn the corners out pretty well is to start sewing 1/2 inch in from the edges, and this is going to help not create too much bulk in the corners of your zipper pouch, so that when you do flip the corners inside out, it helps a lot with debulking those corners. So once you finish your top stitch, it should look something like this, and the back will be nice and tidy. This is such a great way to get neat seams underneath your zipper. To clip our book sleeve together to sew around the edges, we are going to open it up so that the two outer panels are now facing each other, and our liner pieces are facing each other as well. They're both going to be away from each other like this. Now, you want to open up the zipper so that it's about, I would say, 1/3. Then you are going to line up your zipper teeth. The key to getting your zippers to look very clean and neat is to line up that top edge of those panels together. So as you can see, I am lining them up together, and I'm going to clip it just like this and clip that in place. And now we're going to do the other side, and we are going to do the same thing. Line up those edge pieces, hold them together, and you're going to pop a clip in. Perfect. Now that those are clipped, we can go ahead and clip around the edges. The only thing you want to do is make sure that you leave about, I don't know, like a 4-inch gap at the bottom. So you're going to not sew in between here. If it helps you, you can make a mark with a pen, a heat erasable pen, or you can use one of these tools. And you do not want to sew in here so that you can actually flip your project the right side out. So I'm going to go ahead and clip my project together. You want to make sure that the edges are lined up so that you don't have any holes. If you do have holes when you flip it out, you can fix them, so don't worry about that. But try to get them as matched up as possible. This is why cutting your fabric with a template or making sure that they are the same size is going to be your best friend when sewing a book sleeve, or any pouch for that matter. The cutting of a project can really make or break the sewing experience, I've come to find out. Now we are going to do the liner side. And I'm just going to put 2 clips right before where we're going to stop sewing. So as you can see, it is all clipped here and we're ready to take this to the sewing machine. I've broken a lot of needles by sewing over the zippers. So my number one tip when sewing over a zipper, especially if you're using the exact same materials as me, high loft batting, a number 3 or number 5 zipper, I would definitely recommend hand wheeling your needle over the really bulkiest part. So this part and this part, this is gonna save your needle from breaking. Or if you don't wanna use the hand wheel, just go extremely slow over that part because you will encounter some needle breakage if you go too fast over the zipper. So go slow and don't rush it. You wanna finish the project at some point without breaking a zipper. So we are gonna start by sewing from this edge all the way around to the other edge. You're gonna do a back stitch here and then a back stitch when you finish. And you're basically just gonna sew around the entire thing. You're gonna wanna do about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance around the entire thing. That's what this project calls for. Okay, so now that we've sewn all of our pouch closed, we're gonna do some trimming so that it's not bulky in the corners. So we're gonna start off by trimming off these edges. Make sure you do not cut too close to the stitches. You do not want a hole, but you just wanna cut off that bulk. And then I'm gonna go in and cut off the corners. Again, making sure not to cut too close to the stitching. And now we can go ahead and flip our project right side out. You're gonna do this by sticking your hand in the hole. And you want to grab it and pull all that fabric out. Being careful not to be too rough to rip anything. You can push out the corners. You can use a corner tool if you want, but I just use my fingers. We're going to push these zipper corners out with our finger. As you can see, they're pretty matched up on both sides. Now all that's left to do is close up this liner. So I'm gonna pop out the corners up here so that I can get a nice crisp stitch. What you're gonna wanna do is you can use a heat press and heat press it closed. But basically what I do is I like to tuck all of these little loose threads inside of this little hole. And then I just push all of this in and pull it really taut, and I sew along this edge. You can pin it or clip it so that it doesn't move around. And if your fabric is not cooperating with you, then I would suggest folding it in and pressing this down so that it stays, and then you can do your top stitch. We are just going to sew as close to the edge as possible, back stitching when you start and finish. And then again, we are going to trim these threads. Okay, now that we've flipped this out, we are going to push the liner back in. Any little threads that are poking out from the quilting, you can trim off with a pair of scissors, but we're basically done and it looks so good. The color choice of this one is super cute. And she's all done. Here is your new book sleeve. It is super cute, quilted. I'll get a book to show you that a book fits in here. The biggest book that I own, or one of them, I made this sleeve sizing to fit paperbacks, hardbacks, fantasy books, and literally every other book that you can think of. And it does in fact fit in here. You just squish it down and she fits, and then you can zip it up. And here she is.